The Chair now recognizes Mr. Coffman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you so much for your decades of distinguished service, Secretary Panetta, General Dempsey, and for your dedication to maintaining a strong military. I am reminded of the history of Great Britain after World War II, where they still saw themselves as a world power, but they came out heavily in debt. They were weakened by World War II. They were still engaged in anti-communist operations in Greece and Turkey, but then it had to turn to the United States, and we assumed that role. And there's nobody behind us. China is a rising power, and I don't think we'd ever want to turn that responsibility over to China. And so we have to maintain that strong military, that global power, as both of you have so well articulated today. Let me put 3 questions forward, and if we run out of time in terms of answering them, then if you could answer them on the record. The first one is that we still have a selective service system in place, yet according to the Army Recruiting Command, individuals between the ages of 18 and 22, 75% of them, I believe, are ineligible today for enlistment in the United States Army, of young people between the ages of 18 and 22. In 1973 was the last year that we had the draft. In 1974, we disbanded selective service. In 1979, Jimmy Carter put it back on the table as a response to the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And it still exists today, and it's not even in your budget. It's an independent agency, and it's under the Financial Services Committee. It's not even under this committee. And so the question is, do we still need it? The second is in South Korea. I believe we're moving from 1-year assignments to 3-year unaccompanied, 3-year accompanied tours for our 28,000 force presence there. That decision was made, I think, really during the height of the Iraq War, when dwell times were next to nothing. But we're phasing out of Iraq now. We'll be phasing down in Afghanistan. Dwell times will expand. And the question is, do we really need to spend the $13 billion that I believe is necessary in military construction to accommodate that change in policy? Can we do something that's more cost-effective given the expansion in dwell times, like deploying battalions for 6-month rotations to and from CONUS? The last issue concerns, I think we have rank inflation in the military, and I'd like you to take a look at that. I believe that if we look at the height of the Cold War, when I was in the United States Army, we had a military much larger then. But I believe that there are more 4-star flag officers in the military today in a much smaller force. I think we have as many admirals as we have ships in the United States Navy, and I think that is duplicative through the rest of the military, and I would certainly like you to take a look at that and the costs associated with that. Could you go through those 3 questions, please?
No, we are looking at, I'll just go from bottom to top, and the Secretary will take the question about selective service. We are looking at rank. Some of the rank inflation is a result of international partners and their desire for flags, but we are looking at that, believe me. Secondly, on Korea tour normalization, it's part of our strategy review to look at our forward presence wherever we happen to be, but notably in Korea and in Europe, and again to determine how best to do it in an affordable way. And I assure you that we are alert to the fact that tour normalization to 3-year tours might become cost prohibitive. We do need some structure there with families because of the message it sends, and the readiness increases when you have soldiers there for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of looking at everything that costs a lot of money, and that's one of the things that costs a lot of money that we need to look at and determine whether or not we can find some savings in the way we approach that. On the selective service, the registration is still required. You're right that there is a system. It's not associated with us, but You know, my view is that we ought to maintain the registration aspect, because particularly as we go through these budget cuts, particularly as we go into the future, if we face you know, one of those surprises, if we face one of those crises that suddenly occurs, we've got to have some mechanisms in place in order to be able to respond. And while, you know, right now I have to tell you the volunteer force is the best. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It really has served its purpose. But I think we always have to be ready for that possible contingency in the future if we suddenly had to face an unexpected event.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I have 30 more seconds?
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would, in terms of looking at forward bases and whether or not we can demonstrate our support for our allies, whether in NATO or South Korea, through scheduled, regular, routine joint military exercises. We're spending almost 4% of our GDP on defense. I think only 4 of our 28 NATO allies are spending the required 2% required under the NATO Charter. In South Korea, they're spending 2.7% of their gross domestic product on defense. I believe we're at north of 3.6%. It seems like we care more about defending the South Koreans and the Europeans than the Europeans and the South Koreans. And so I think that we need to strike a balance in that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.